Tom here from GembaDocs.
Brian Meyers from JCR Offroad.
And I came all the way over from Ireland to visit Brian and the team here at JCR Offroad because they've done such an amazing job implementing GembaDocs. How many SOPs and how many Kanbans you done?
Over 1,000 SOPs and over 1,000 Kanban cards.
In how long?
Just 4 months.
Ooh. So on the way here, I thought it'd be a good idea to ask the Lean community, do you have any questions that you want me to ask when I get here? Or Brian, that's maybe going to help you on your Lean journey and on your SOP journey. So this is what this is all about. So let's dive in, Brian.
Yeah, let's get started.
So we've grouped them into 4 areas. We've got alignment, which is around how you got your team lined up and any planning processes. Then we have document. So how did you go about documenting the processes? Implement. How did you go about making them real and in the real world and not just on paper? And finally, improvement. So those are our 4 areas we're going to discuss today. So to start off, let's talk about alignment.
Okay.
So how did you build engagement with the team?
So we were already working on doing a Lean journey. So we were already doing morning meetings and teaching skills. And the SOP was just one of the first tools that we saw as a real easy barrier to entry for Lean. And it was pretty easy to say, hey guys, check this out. We can do this, and we can take a lot of the training out of our day-to-day activities and get it documented so that we don't have to be the person that trains every single person.
So where's the value for you and in the team in creating those SOPs? What's in it for the guys that are creating them, if you know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, so there was one conversation that really kind of stands out, and that was when one of my guys that works in the robot, his name is Lee, I was saying, hey, you need to get down there and teach Terry how to do this thing, but I need you to start making SOPs. And he was saying, I'm too busy, so I can't take the time to make SOPs. And I said, so you would rather walk from your office upstairs, downstairs, all the way up to the shop 4 or 5 times to show him one thing? Or do you want to take the time to create the SOP so then you don't have to show him again? And that was where he was like, yeah, you're right. I should just make the SOP. So once they started to create these things, they started to really see the tangible value in letting the SOP be the expert instead of you being the expert. Then they were freed up to do regular work where other people could pick up and do things without need to ask every single time or multiple times how to do a process.
So the key benefit was increasing the flow in their day. They got to experience that.
Yeah, they're creating capacity by getting rid of some of these, monotonous tasks of trying to show somebody over and over again, or show somebody 4 times so that they know how to do it. So by getting rid of that, they can just focus on their workload and not have to focus on, hey, Ben, I need you to come over here and show me how to use the box machine. Or, hey, Ben, can you show me how to use the box gluer? Or how do I staple this box? Or what dimensions is this box? All of that now is documented in one place where one person can go and get to it. It also gives the person that's using the material some autonomy on their own, because now they have a source to go and get the documents that they need. They don't feel like, I don't know what I'm doing and I got to keep asking questions all the time. So it gives them a sense of pride knowing that, it's not so much pressure to remember everything all the time, because they can always go back to the document and see it, as opposed to saying, hey, Tom, how many times do I need to ask this question before I understand it?
That's huge. That's even helped me understand it at another level. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to come here, because of the exceptional pace that you guys have managed this implementation. I knew that there were special things that you've done that maybe not many other people have. So creating the poll so that Brian's not having to run around and push everything happening in here, that's being pulled through the whole organization. Like, even from how many people you have who are creating and editing GembaDocs. Like, how big is this organization? How many people do you have?
So we have 47 employees, and everybody has a login for GembaDocs, and every person can get in the GembaDocs, and every person can create in GembaDocs, whether that's Kanban or SOPs.
And that's huge again, because, frankly speaking, often when I'm talking to a company like yours, it's just under 50 people, I'll say, you'll be fine with 5 user licenses. You kind of go to people for your SOP creation. But I can see now with your example that having the autonomy right at the front line. They don't need to go and ask some special person
Right.
to create it.
Yeah.
That you've took that friction out of the system through doing that.
Yeah, with the idea that you have to have a centralized person or a couple of people that then go and stand next to somebody while they do their work and help them document it. Why can't the person that's just doing the work document? Right? They're not dumb. They're not idiots. And with Lean, you have respect for people is number one. And if I can't respect this person to think that they're capable of creating an SOP without somebody babysitting them, well, that's step one. Right? And sure, you can give feedback. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll create the documents or let them create the documents. And then we just give them feedback. Hey, Nate, I saw that you did this. You don't have to do it this way on this step, or you don't have to do it that way on this step, or, hey, make sure you add this here. And it's constructive feedback. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then off they go, and maybe a couple more times you might, go in and correct some spelling or correct the part number to make sure the part number is the right number, things like that. It's totally good because 90% of the document's done. And I'm not stepping on anybody's toes by adding my input into this document. Right? I'm just fixing a part number. I'm just fixing a typo. Right? I'm making a couple of suggestions maybe to help with the standard. And it's often
totally get that. So no, I can really see how you built engagement and you've really democratized that process of creating SOPs, as well as having that input from senior people to make sure they're up to stuff.
Yeah.
So I love how you've done that. Probably the next most common question I get asked as CEO of GembaDocs after the how do I get my people on board question is how do I prioritize what I should be doing first? Which SOP should I do first?
Right.
And I have my own answer, which we're not going to reveal because the point's hearing Brian's today. But Brian, what was your approach?
My approach was anywhere, just start. There doesn't need to be you don't need to think 5 years down the road what this is going to look like. You can just start because we can adapt all the SOPs as we grow to change stuff around. But to start at the bottom is the easiest spot, right? Let's figure out how to make sure that every machine has a QR code on it so that you can turn the machine on, run the machine, operate the machine, create what it needs to create. It doesn't matter what it is. Let's just start there. How do I turn the air compressor on? How do I turn it off at the end of the day? That has to be there, right? So by doing those things first and getting those out of the way, then it really opens the door for them understanding how the SOP works and the power of that SOP.
Something I noticed because I was in your morning meeting today, it's the first time I've seen it. You guys do stretches in your morning meeting and you use the GembaDoc for standardized approach of doing your stretches, which as the CEO of GembaDocs, we don't even do that. So it's like, wow. But I love the insight I got from that is that you're teaching standards every day from that simplistic level, like you're doing it in the bathrooms. I can see that. You can see standards everywhere here. But just that simple reinforcement. And the other thing that you guys were doing that not everybody does is you were bringing in new SOPs into that morning meeting. You go, oh, we got a new SOP for this. This is how that's working. People were having input and improving the SOP in the meeting.
Yeah.
So you're really using it as that standardization step, which is so critical within Lean, which GembaDocs really helps to make happen. But you're bringing it in at all these different opportunities and all these different times to reinforce
the importance of it.
Which I just absolutely love.
Yeah.
Next question, how do you resource it? How did you decide to, what time do you give your people who does them? How do you make sure your production doesn't stop? How do you resource your SOP effort?
So that's a really tricky question because we've actually fell into the trap of having too many people creating SOPs, and it actually started to lower our production. So we did see that over a month, and we're like, maybe we need to be a little more careful with that. After that, what we have done is we've started to use surplus people. So, we're scaled for so much more work than what we're currently doing. So, I have maybe 8 employees of surplus. So I'm using those 8 employees as surplus to float around and create SOPs. I've even got to where I have some of my front desk employees during their 3S time actually creating cleaning standards on the laser or the brake press. And what it's doing is it's helping them, one, learn what what it's like to work in production. 2, they're asking for information from these operators. Hey, how do you want this cleaned? And then they also get fresh eyes on stuff. So yes, you can definitely go too far, too fast, and completely tank your production. You just have to be aware of that. That's a mistake we made. It's not a mistake I'm going to make anymore. SOPs are very important. Other certain areas, the SOP doesn't take a lot of time. Well, for us in our shipping department, we're doing a packaging SOP. That packaging step, it might add 5 minutes to that one package, the one time that they're doing it, and then it's done. So for them to create 20 or 25 as a unit a day isn't a big deal. Now, if I ask my fabrication team, I need you to make 25 SOPs that are 54 steps long. Yeah, then we have a problem.
Very different. And you were sharing some insights around that packaging, which you guys have 300 or 400 packaging SOPs now. And even the mechanism like that you guys identified that I was going to give you a tip on was to create those standards. Well, another question we could ask is can you standardize the standards? Well, what you were doing with your packaging specs is you were taking your root packaging standard and just duplicating it in GembaDocs and then just filling in the blanks on the new one. Yeah. And it serves 2 purposes that I saw. It's kind of a resource related question because how you can be more efficient is you not only standardize what you're expecting to get from a packaging standard, you're also making it easier and faster to generate the packaging standard because the person doesn't have to do the thinking across, what is required here. You've already said it in the standard.
Yeah, we have a lot of products that look very similar. And in the past, what we would do is we would just loop them together and expect the person to do the packaging to know the difference between these 2 things. Well, that's kind of an unfair thing to do. So what we actually did was we made it for every single one where it actually shows the actual product. Even if the product is similar, I want it to show the difference because when they're packaging it, if they're looking at the SOP, they're going to notice if they're making a mistake. Where if I just use one generic photo of a certain product over and over again, then they're not going to catch it. So that's been something that's been really important for us.
I got a lot of satisfaction out of it because in your morning meeting this morning, you guys were talking about how you're getting so much fewer returns. And from what I heard in the morning meeting, there's 2 reasons for that. You're not batching anymore, so you're not making 16 of the wrong thing anymore. You're doing them once. And the second factor is now you've got proper instructions for how to pack them before they go out.
Yep.
So, I got a lot of satisfaction out of that. But for me, why do we do all this SOP stuff? We only do it if there's going to be value there at the end.
Yes.
So even just in the meeting, there's the value because I didn't send 16 wrong things all over the USA and have all the sweeping up that's required and the huge mountains of waste that come from it. And if you look at the return on that, just a finger in the air, Tom talking here.
Yeah.
Probably $500 every time something like that happens. Doesn't happen 12 times a month. Your effort reward ratio is pretty high.
Yep. For us with GembaDocs, and we're already using an ERP system. So with the ERP system, it's telling us what to pull. But with GembaDocs, it gives us a visual. Epicor does not. We just see part numbers. And I was telling you earlier, there could be 2 bolt packs of the same part number, and Epicor is just going to show you at one time on the bill of materials, unless you put it in there twice, 1 and 1, which we've done. So now what I'm doing is I'm stripping away all that knowledge out of Epicor, putting it into the GembaDoc packaging SOP, and then from there it's all visual, right? Shows the part number, shows how many. You can tell if there's 2 bolt packs. It shows 2 pictures of 2 bolt packs. So yeah, you're really starting to create something that is super quick to do, and then you're not creating mistakes.
And a lot more intuitive to use. Absolutely. Because we were looking at some of your legacy documents that's and very, very common in my own manufacturing experience, where we were at your press break and you're changing this at the moment. You just got a label with like 5 numbers up and you're expecting everybody to know what to do from there. And that's super common in my experience. Works order comes out and it has 3 lines on it or 10 lines.
Right.
There's no more information. It's okay if you've worked there for 20 years. Yeah. But apart from that, you're asking for trouble. So our next question is, how do you handle any resistance from your team if they're not coming on board with this project?
Right. So one thing you have to keep in mind is you're paying them.
Right.
So it's part of the job.
Yeah.
And we've had this direct conversation with several people where we said, you must create these today. Right? With our packaging department, we're waiting for the product to show up, and we can't create the SOP until we have the product. And as soon as the product shipped out the door, we don't have it anymore. So I'm telling them, you have to create these things. And we had that discussion because, we're out there, we're creating, things are going well. All of a sudden, boom, no more being created. Wait a minute. So we just literally said, hey, this is part of your job responsibility. You have to do this. In other areas out there, I don't necessarily use that same way to go about it. If people don't want to create, I'm not forcing them to create. I'd rather the people that want to create them. Would flex to other areas to help.
Yeah.
They couldn't access anything. So then they're like, I can't see machine.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to go in there and change it.
Yeah.
So eventually I went in and I gave all to everybody. Because honestly, you'd be like, I have accounting stuff. So your accounting person's someone's going to go and figure out how to get into your Epicor, log in, then be able to get to it's just not realistic, right? You can just let everybody have access to everything and be done with it.
For me, it's always about trying to get the answer where the question's at. So we have a customer in India that have it in their ERP system that every job has the SOP. So that work order pops up digitally.
Yeah. And that's
the SOP is there.
Yeah.
And so nobody needs to go looking for it.
Yes.
It is where it's needed. And that to me is fundamentally what we should be striving for. So Brian and I invented a new word today.
Lingo.
Lingo.
Like the lingo, but lean.
So it's like, if you want to talk real BS stuff around lean with lots of acronyms and things that nobody knows what they mean, especially me, that's lingo. So now we're going to talk about our document section. And our first question is, how do you go about documenting complex processes?
Well, you just start. It's as simple as that. You step by step. You may have an SOP that might need to be 50 steps. And if it requires that, it requires that. Obviously, you would try not to create that. What I found is that you want to be very visual with your SOP and you want to cut the words out, right? You have a character limit, cut it in half. Just no one's reading the words. Just get it in the picture, document what needs to happen. And, when we were talking about with Monty, documenting something with stuff that we don't even know, he's able to do it, right? Because if you can just write it down, you have it. Whether it's hard, whether it's simple, just getting it written down is the battle.
Do you have any approaches about using process experts and the person who does the job every day? Or, sometimes do you have more than one person who's going to do an SOP?
We try to let the people that are actually doing the work do the SOP. That's the ideal situation. They can do the SOP while they're doing the work. And then a lot of times what we did initially, we would actually have other people come from different departments and try the SOPs. And that kind of gave us the idea, this works. And so some of the real complex ones, we said, well, let's see if it works. And, we pull somebody into that department, give them the SOP that we created that we think is complex, and let them try. And every time, 10 out of 10 times, they could run that process with the information that we had documented. So we essentially had documented a really hard process, easy enough that anybody could operate it.
Yeah. And then I suppose you've got if someone's running that complicated SOP and they don't understand, they can always put their hand up and come back.
Yep. Right.
Our next question around how do you document your processes is, do you have any standards about how you create an SOP, what should or shouldn't be included before you start work and so on?
Well, what has really kind of happened is each department's kind of defined it themselves on what their SOP is going to look like. After that, everybody wants to create the best value in these SOPs. So they're looking at whatever everyone else is doing, and they're doing similar. Like you were talking about earlier with our packaging one, we're just duplicating. Initially, when I started that project, I had no idea what this was going to look like. It's a whole new process for us. So I actually created an SOP and printed it and gave it to them all as an example. Hey, this is how we're going to do this. I want you to follow this standard. So I have done that in some places. Otherwise, it's really easy to just go in, see what somebody else did, how to operate a machine, and then turn it on. But, the sauce is all the same, right? If you're going to figure out how to document something, you start at the beginning and you end at the finish. So what's the standard, right? And then from there, you put in as much information as you need or as little as you need. There's no real standard.
I love the way you're answering that question, because I think humans just want to overcomplicate everything. And I've seen that and been frustrated with other people myself with that same paralysis by analysis. It's like, we're going to have all these I's dotted and T's crossed before we start. And then we don't learn. Whereas if we just start, we do. Maybe it's not perfect, but we learn something. Then we iterate and we get better. And one of the other little tips I saw from here today already is how you're bringing it back into the morning meeting, so people are able to have input on the SOP as it's created. So you're sharing that best practice and learning points with the entire organization, not just in a one-to-one interaction.
Yep. I mean, the worst thing that happens is you make the SOP and it requires changes. And that's it. I mean, so the next person that runs it says, you know what, this step and this step feel repetitive. So why don't we get rid of that? You know, we've had situations where, you know, someone shows how to make a left and how to make a right. We can also just say, make it the same way you made the left, just flip it. You know what I mean? You don't need to document 10 steps for a left, 10 steps for a right. You know, you have to allow people to use their minds.
Beautiful. So Brian, how do you handle when you've got people with language difficulties, maybe people from different countries may not speak English that well? Do you have any challenges around that?
Well, as I said earlier, you want to keep the words away, right? You want less words. Make everything as visual as possible. Visual management, visual control is good for a reason. And you can do the same thing in your SOP, where I have 2 Syrians that live here in the United States, and they work in my welding department. And one of them speaks pretty good English, the other one doesn't speak any English. And they're able to go into the document, look at the pictures, and figure out what's going on. Or when they're cleaning the bathroom with the breaker, they're able to look at the pictures and figure out what's going on. Now, if I had a wall of text this big, what good is it going to do that with that, right? The other thing is with GembaDocs, you do have a lot of different languages in there, so you can translate. You can set their setting so it reads it in French or whatever, right? Obviously, Arabic is not an option because it reads backwards and it's a real difficulty. Maybe someday we'll get there, but right now we don't. So just making sure that you're keeping things visual will help everybody, regardless of the language barrier.
Yeah. Next section is all about implementing, taking SOPs and making them reality. And probably the most common question I get asked here, how do we make sure that the people follow the SOPs? What's your answer, Brian?
Well, it's pretty easy. So you go and you buy one of these spray bottles, they're like 20 ounces or 16 ounces, and you fill it with water. It's like a cat, jumps on the furniture, eats it. No, it's actually not what happens at all.
Cattle prodder? No.
If you're going to rub people's faces into these SOPs that are the experts of doing this process, they're the ones that documented it, right? You have to give them the ability to do the work. They're creating the standard for other people that don't know the standard to follow it. Sure, is it exactly the way Toyota wants a standard work document to work? Probably not. But what we have found is that we allow somebody to create the document. Then that way, if somebody doesn't know how to do it, they can reference the document to do the standard work. The other thing is trying to get everybody on the same page. So, for welding, as an example, there may be spots where people weld here, but they should weld here. We're trying to get some uniformity in that product. But what you're doing is you're giving them a document to make their job easier. So then they're willing to go and follow the document. The other big secret is you have to put real information in your SOPs that they have to go and get there.
Ooh, like this. Tell me more.
So if you had, in our packaging one, if you had a bolt pack, but they don't know what bolt pack goes with this particular product, and it's in the SOP, it's the only place they can get that information, they have to open it to get to that information. So you have to start taking valuable information, putting it into the SOP if you really want to drive people into it.
That is beautiful.
If you just have an SOP on how to clean the bathroom, right? There's no real like treasure to go in and get, right? It's just looking at pictures and following it. You can print it and put it on a wall. But if you're wanting people to follow something, you have to put real information in it. So if you're just documenting stuff to document stuff, then you're just creating wallpaper, as the industry says, right?
Yeah.
You're just creating wallpaper. And some of your SOPs may be wallpaper, but you may want that standard there for, somebody down the line comes in as a new employee, they may need that information.
Well, the bathroom is a great example because I use the bathroom at home and in my own company. So I find it liberating So I don't have to think about how do I clean the bathroom. I just check and I do it like that. And let's say a lazy crutch for me to use. So I don't need to think about it.
Right.
That's another implement question. So how did you move from all these documents into implementation and this happening in the real world? How did you manage that?
Well, we've been building a process around these GembaDocs. So they have to use them. So on the back of our Kanban cards, we're actually putting the SOP links. So when they get the card and they have the product, they have to scan it to figure out what is this, what fixture do I need, what bolt pack do I need, that kind of stuff. The next step for us is implementing it into an ERP system so that when the job comes up and they start the job, there it is, they click on it, it launches it, and they can scroll through it. Now, if you wanted to be somebody that's like everyone has to look at it, there's ways in these ERP systems, the company that we're working with is Docket, they make it so you have to scroll all the way to the bottom, almost like the consent on Apple. But you can do that or not do that. I mean, it really comes down to what your culture is going to accept.
I think that the key point that I'm taking from you here, it's really helped to clarify it for me. You have to integrate the SOPs into your working system.
Mm-hmm.
If your SOPs are in a bucket on a folder on the computer or on, anywhere offline, you're always going to struggle. Whereas when your SOPs are integrated into this is how we work, that's where you really get the gold.
Yep.
So Brian, now that you've got more than 1,000 SOPs integrated into your system, how's it improved quality, safety, costs? What tangible benefits have you seen?
We're all really new to this still, right? So to say, what's the 5-year span of this, right? We've seen little successes that we've had. We've been able to remove problems that we've had historically by implementing the GembaDocs solution. But I can't sit here and say, I saved, $300,000 in the last 4 years. Maybe in 4 years, I'll be able to tell you that wrong. But obviously, if you have standards, you're able to control your quality. If you have a standard, you can actually make improvements off the standard. One of the things that really stuck with me early on was I heard, and it was a Toyota translation, Japanese translation, where they said, if you just have variances and you have everybody creating variances, you have 5 variances, and now you want to make an improvement, you're going to create 5 more variances on top of that. And that was really like a, oh crap, moment for me where I was like, okay, we've got to start with the standards so that we have an ability to actually build on it. So by taking these processes, saying this is how we do it, allow us to build on it, we're going to control quality. The product, as it comes to inspection, looks the same. Whether 3 different people built it, it all is looking the same. So starting to see that. You're starting to see things that normally got missed are no longer being missed. Light brackets and bumpers are now being welded in as opposed to being forgotten. And then you're not relying on the next person to catch it, right? Things like that. Then from there, you start to see quality in the packaging because it's all uniform, it's all the same. And then for us with the packaging line, normally we would just stick all of our product on the shelf raw. So like it's powder coated sitting on top of each other. Somebody slides out a panel from another panel. They could scratch either panel. They could forget the brackets that are supposed to be included. Well, now with the packaging SOP, it's all being done. When the stuff comes in, they package it, they put it on the shelf in a box. So if it happens to sit there longer than it should, we'd have a bunch of dust built up on our product. So yeah, there's things like that that you can really look at that you haven't been able to control previously and create solutions to do that.
What I love about what you're saying there, that just the process of consciously considering your process leads to process improvements. So if you've not been going through the SOP process, you wouldn't have made those changes to how you're putting your finished parts on the shelf to be pulled.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd still be sitting there with dust and scratches and excess inventory. But now you've standardized that through considering the process problem.
Yeah.
Our next question is, I'm going to read it out verbatim. I'm interested in learning how they are using the SOPs with experienced team members, or is the idea to support and train new people coming into the business?
That's a twofold question, and I think I have a twofold answer for it.
Good.
One, it is to support new employees that come into the business or to support people that have never done that process, giving you the ability to cross-train, have people step in if you have a bottleneck or wherever. So that's absolutely there for that. Two, a lot of things that we're doing, we're trying to create standards for where we've had variances. So we may have 3 guys that make the same product, but they make it all differently. So we're saying, okay, this is the way we're going to make it. So I do have some experienced employees that are changing the way they make something so that it reflects the standard. And then from there, once they know the standard, obviously they don't need it taped to their forehead to do the work. They can do the work.
So give us an example of a process where you've done that.
In fabrication would be the easiest one, where they're welding a product together, and a person may put welds in a certain location where another one may put welds in a different location. And it could be the difference of a weld is here and the other person puts it here, right? But now we want to make sure that we're always putting it in the same spot.
I get it. Because you're going to reduce all the variation, the dimensional variation, visual, and everything. Beautiful. So since everybody's creating SOPs, how do you post or publish them?
One of the things you saw in our morning meetings is that we're actually sharing an SOP that was created. So every day in our morning meeting, somebody's saying, here's a new SOP being made. We actually do have to do something at a higher level there, right? So it's like my responsibility to go in at the moment and make sure that the documentation is getting put where it needs to be put. Right? Now, when we get to where we're doing this inside of an MES system in an app, like in Epicor, I'm going to have to be the one that transfers that information to that job, right? So that it gets uploaded into the space. For now, they're getting put there, and then they're kind of communicating across the department. Hey, I created an SOP for this. And then the next time somebody may make it, they may pull it up and use it. But our long-term goal would be that it's getting put into an apparatus that's being able to show that SOP in the future.
That leads us beautifully into the next question. So Brian, that is an absolutely beautiful segue into the final segment, which is around the improvement of your system. So now that you've created over 1,000 SOPs, what's the future vision? What improvements have you got in mind going forward?
The idea is we started and we made up. That's step one, right? Why I always talk about this one improvement we had was we had this machine, and the way that you check the water in the machine was you had to stick a finger in a hole, and if your finger was wet, then you had enough water. And I had employees that came in and they're like, are you serious? We're going to document this. We should make an improvement. And I was like, no, just document it. Then when we make the improvement, we can update the SOP, right? It's the very essence of what you start with. This is how we do it. Document it. It may be embarrassing, but let's just start. Right? After that, as you evolve your process, you can start to tweak those SOPs to create faster times, better quality. A lot of times we're actually changing components in our product that we're actually laser cutting different. So our engineering is making big changes. We've realized that, we've made a huge burden for a lot of people. So we're starting to do that. But we're also starting to do poka-yoke, where we're actually doing some error-proofing into our product. So when those now come on those SOPs, they'll have to get updated as well. So it's going to have to become a living product. And the operators, they have to be the ones that say, this SOP is out of date, and they take the time then to create a new updated version of that document.
The key point that I'm taking from a lot of what we've discussed today, including that, is that when the SOPs are an integral part of your production system, they're naturally going to improve. Because as those engineering changes come in and you need to use the SOP to use the product, the SOP needs to be updated now.
Right. And
it's a natural process. And so when it's offline, you have to consciously have this improvement system.
Yes. If you didn't have an ERP system that allows you to do this, then you may have to do some sort of page that you put QR codes on for the product name. You may have to have a binder that has a link to get to this information. Kanban cards, you may need to be able to put those links to those documents on the Kanban card. That would be the easiest way if you didn't have an ERP system, would be have a Kanban that's traveling with the part that has the information on it. Yeah,
that to me, I've seen at Adman Steel Sheds in Ireland, for example, their production Kanbans have the SOPs, QR codes on the Kanbans. So that means that you've got that integrated approach again.
Right.
And I thought that's the thing I want to highlight, because, even when I thought about improvement systems, like features we built into GembaDocs, like there's a review feature where you can structure a review, you can set when you're going to do it and how you're going to do it. And for super critical processes that, say, in our electronics company, we have some really critical products. and we want to review those processes every 3 months. We want to make sure we review them. We want to make sure everybody's trained. We want to make sure that the standards are still relevant, that there's been no significant process changes or deviations since the last time we audited. So there's a place for that kind of systemic review. But there's also, I think the best answer is having an integrated system that relies on the SOPs, and then you're naturally going to keep improving. That, to me, that's one big learning experience I've had from visiting you guys today. So our final question on the improvement section is, I'm going to read this one out. What have you learned from the process of creating over 1,000 SOPs? And what tips do you have for the rest of us mortals?
Well, mortals. It's the same thing over and over again. You got to start. You have to start. You can talk about all these ways that you could do something 5 years from now, or how you're going to build on it, but you're going to waste all this time and you're never going to start. With Lean, whether it's improvements, or whether it's SOPs, or whether it's Kanban, whatever it is, you have to start. Get up, take action, move forward, and eventually the stuff will start to roll. When you start to show people value in something, whether it's a product you sell or whether it's a process that you're doing in your building, people are going to be attracted to value. Yeah. So when you're creating value in these SOPs, they see value in them. Makes their job easier, makes training easier, makes somebody's life coming into the company easier. You're predisposed to start creating them and using them. So that's really the secret sauce. Just start and start to create value with that.
For me, like condensing that down, you've got to show value. I think that is where it starts, and that creates the pull we look for within the organization, so you don't have to push it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got action this day.
Right.
Is one of my favorite Lean quotes from Mr. Churchill, who's not one of my favorite people. Sorry about that word.
We're American now.
Sorry, world. We'll leave that in because I think it's funny. So we've got, where do we go? Create value, show it, action this day, and finally, I think, keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
And those are 3 great tips.
Yeah. And then it's all done from there. It's all done.
It's all done. So, Brian, that's been so much fun having this conversation, and I've really, really learned a lot.
When I came into the Lean community, I didn't expect this to be the thing that makes us famous. As I've said, I didn't know what standard work was 6 months ago. I didn't even have a clue what it was. So to be where I'm at today is wild. But I think when you have something that works so well, it's so easy to implement something like this. And I really hope that people can see how we're using this and take ideas and implement it in their space as well. And before long, a bunch of people will have these 1,000 SOP flags.
Yeah, because that's our next thing. We're awarding Brian with the first ever GembaDocs award for 1,000 SOPs and 1,000 Kanbans.
It's not like a YouTube 10,000 subscriber thing. I mean, it's not quite that, but it looks like it's going to be pretty cool.
But I had so much fun. I had to pop on a plane and travel for 24 hours to get here. And my life, it was worth every single minute of it. Thanks, bro.
Hey, thanks for coming. We appreciate your time.